conversations was pretty political and the system. I may have lived among Bloods and Crips, but I was a budding music enthusiast whose musical taste was more integrated than his daily life. It was not until my undergraduate studies that the word diaspora entered my vocabulary. It means the displacement of a people from their native land. I think back to childhood and have a better understanding of why the education about African heritage and black leadership was so persistent in my communities. Scattered stuff can get lost, diluted, and amalgamated. My son sometimes pours something mysterious into my water and then smiles when I can't figure out what he mixed. Because at the time of this writing, he was about 7 years old. I was not the victim of spiking. We talking Capri Sun type mocktails that cause my face to contort as he laughs. It's easy to lose the essence once something is diminished. And that makes me a son of the diaspora. It also means that my learning true masculinity was a conflagration of competing messages, many of which were toxic. Men told me that a man is supposed to provide for his family by pretty much any means necessary. Men don't nurture and don't need to spend time with their kids as a priority. I can't imagine saying that to a man in the 1970s, 80s South Central Los Angeles. There's some parts here that might not be for Miles, so I don't know. But he's busy, so I don't know. Should I read it? I'll just go. I can't imagine saying to a man in the 1970s, 80s South Central Los Angeles, bruh, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think you've been emotionally unavailable of late. Unadulterated retorts might sound like, boy, you better get out of my damn face with that feminine shit. Act like you got a pair of nuts. Fuck I look like. Florida Evans or something? There's a more sanitized version of this from the hyper-masculine Christian males, but you need only delete the expletives to see the translation. When I was going through my divorce, I was told to accept whatever custody arrangement materialized, because after all, men just need to be there some of the time, particularly for boys and especially when they are older. Fatherhood was presented to me as a distinctly separate part of manhood than the role of a husband, and much more important. Most of the dads I knew growing up were suspected of infidelity, but if that man was handling his business by clothing and feeding his offspring, that was a real man. Now I knew that something felt weird about that estimation of fatherhood, but I also understood some of the emphasis in light of how few educated black men I saw in my community. And this is not to say that the men in my church, on my block, at my football practices were stupid. They were not. The majority of them were blue-collar working class men who had not gone to college. Some were former military and even Vietnam veterans, since that was my parents' generation. The black men in my community were either natives of South Los Angeles, Inglewood, Compton, and surrounding areas, or they were imports from the historically segregated South who had come to Southern California for more opportunity. They were often one of two generations removed from living in the South, the part of the United States most associated with de jure racism, Jim Crow oppression, and civil rights struggle. There were resident attributes consistent with these men, the hallmarks of the black father. Those qualities were modeled and prescribed. Among the chief virtues I observed by watching fathers in my community were physical protection of the family, expectation of female subservience, care for all of outdoor responsibilities of the home, sexual independence from criticism, and commanded respect. Defining black fatherhood, even now that